Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, we're going to be moving a Japanese maple. I've got a Tamukeyama weeping cut leaf Japanese maple over here that I've had for a long time. I've actually contorted the trunk over the years. And if you've been watching the channel for any length of time, this came from the old house. It was actually a display piece I had at the garden center that I had before that. And it made it to my house in a container, and it was here for a year in a container. Then it went in the ground last year, and you just can't see it back here where we have it. So we're gonna move it out here as more of a focal point in the garden. So that's the actual reason that it's being moved. There's nothing in particular that's different moving a Japanese maple than there is moving anything else. I moved an azalea the other day. There were some azaleas here actually that got moved as well, just off camera because I did a video on moving an encore azalea. I moved 5 more out of this space, or Steph actually moved 5 more out of this space, and to create this open space for us to put the maple in it. There's nothing in particular different other than they're pretty aggressive rooting out into the landscape. So if it's been in the ground for a long time, it's probably going to be pretty hard to get it out of the ground, and it's probably going to need some root pruning on it before you move it. And we'll talk about that when we move back here to where the maple is. Japanese maples makes a really good focal point, center point piece in the garden. This is a cut leaf weeping maple. You know, you also have upright ones and all kinds of different Japanese maples, and there's some many Japanese maples videos on the channel if you're interested in learning more. When we're moving something like this, I'd like to go ahead and kind of guess about how big that root ball is going to be moving over here and get started on this hole where it's going, so that once I get started on it over there and I get some better idea, I'll come back and maybe make the hole a little bit bigger or whatever. But I'm at least going to get some sort of start on it so it spends less time overall out of the ground. This space, all of our landscape out here compost was put down, wood chips were put down, it's been mulched several times. There's really nothing I need to add to the soil here at all. Anytime I dig now, whatever organic, the humus layer that's on the top will get mixed in with the soil down below. The one thing we have going on right now though is it is bone dry. I'm digging at the beginning of December. I would not expect to go down and have this, which is just absolutely bone dry soil. Never seen it before, honestly, in December here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I mean, other places in the country, obviously, you can have very dry soil any time of the year, but here it's really unusual for us at this point to still be this dry. And so I need to, the other thing about digging this hole is I'm gonna go ahead and water it some too. I'm using my trenching shovel, which was about 4 or maybe 5 inches longer than this when I first started using this. I'm running out of shovel. Somebody said that the other day in a video, and it's absolutely true. I do need to find another one that I like. I've purchased a few others that I just didn't like as much as this one, but it makes quick work out of digging in this compacted clay. I've got a Pickmatic in the shop over there, and I could come over here and definitely slam that thing into the ground and break this up pretty quickly. But having a smaller shovel like this is much easier to stick down into the ground. Again, got wide shovels as well. Just found over the years, this thing makes very quick work of compacted soil. Doesn't take much out of the hole at the time though, so you're doing this, you know, doing a lot of that, but the actual digging part goes really quickly. So I've dug a kind of a base hole here. Let's go over here and get the maple. This maple was planted in the middle of these 3 Mojo Pittosporum. These are Southern Living Plant Collection dwarf Pittosporum, and they're really beautiful. And it's looked great in between here, but obviously it's too crowded with too many other things going on. I've got a gardenia I need to move back here as well. It was almost planted there to have it, because we didn't know where we were going to put it at the time. So that'll get moved as well, probably out into the center. It's going to end up with more space. But this maple has only been in the ground for maybe 18 months or something like that at this point. It was in a container forever and ever. It's going to come out of the ground really, really easy. And the way I know that, I can take my shovel and I can stick it down in the ground. You know, I don't know how much shovel's left, maybe 7 inches there, went into the ground. And I can pull back gently and I can see that tree move. That gives me some indication right there. That's just that it's going to come out of the ground pretty easy. You know, if I stuck the shovel in the ground and it just, you know, nothing, no vibration went through that tree at all, then I know I'm kind of in for it a little bit, you know, in for some work. This one's going to come out very, very easily. If it's been in the ground, you know, for a long time, this is true of any woody shrub, especially true with trees and especially true with maples. Maples, again, root pretty aggressively out into the landscape. Japanese maples not as much as like red maples or the shade, you know, shade trees, but still pretty aggressive. What I would do is come over here and actually root prune it. I would do what I just did, which is stick the shovel down in the ground out, you know, out toward the edge of the drip line. I don't need to go that far out with this particular tree because I know it hasn't rooted out there yet. But I would go around the drip line and actually cut the feeder roots, the roots that are in the top 3-4 inches. Okay, I just cut those, just go around the circle, cut them, and then just leave the tree in place for a few months and allow it to just kind of recover from that initial damage, and then move it over there. The best time of year to do this is just anytime it's dormant. I think most people watching can move one of these from December through March, probably March being the absolute best time to do it, just because it's about to wake up, it's about to put on some root growth. It may recover a little quicker having done it at that time. But down here in zone 7B, 8A, where I'm at, the winter's just not gonna be tough on it. But you can see right there that it's just gonna come out pretty easy. So I'm gonna go around, cut these little feeder roots around it, hopefully not breaking the maple today and not doing too much damage to these pittosporum. Cutting a much smaller root ball than I normally would, but I just know it's not rooted out very far yet. May have a smaller root ball on it than when I put it in. This move is really kind of funny. Normally I'll put a tree or a shrub or whatever on some sort of plastic tarp or something like that, and then I'll drag it to where it needs to go. Or I'll stick it in a low wheelbarrow and I'll, you know, ride it over so that I can get close to where I'm going without knocking all the soil off of it. I'm trapped here and then I'm kind of trapped there. So the best thing for me to do in this case is just to lift it up and take it over there. The timing on this is super important. You know, I said that winter would be the absolute best time while it's dormant, especially with the size of the root ball versus the size of the tree that I have on this. Because I had it contained in a container for so long, it hasn't rooted out a whole lot. I mean, there just weren't roots. I mean, I started, before we started filming, I went out a little bit wider than that hole just to see if there were any. There were just no roots out there. They're all pretty contained toward the middle. So having this small root ball and the size of the top on this thing, if I moved it while it was in leaf, it would probably drop the vast majority of its leaves pretty quickly if I was trying to do this during the summertime. Sometimes we don't have any choice. Let's say you're moving out of a house, you want to take this Japanese maple with you that's been your favorite plant in your garden, and it's summertime. You know, you don't have any choice. I just get it quickly out of the ground and into a container, some sort of potting soil around it, maybe reduce the size of the canopy just a bit, you know, cut back the end of each branch, maybe 6 inches, something like that, to reduce the amount of water it's having to use. And that may prevent you from losing, you know, a whole lot of leaves on it, but if it may go through some sort of transition where it has to de-leaf. And then it should have enough energy though to re-leaf out, you know. Anyway, I'm gonna move this. I'm gonna pick it up and move it. It's not very heavy. And I still haven't watered this hole. I said I was going to, and I've got to do it. So I'm going to move this back over here and get all of this watered real quick. We can go over to the root ball and just kind of measure the depth with our shovel to see how far down it needs to be. And it looks like I need to go a little bit deeper. I don't need to go a whole lot wider, but I think it does need to go down just a hair more. This is gonna have to be watered several times when not the best time to be moving something when it's this dry, but I can deal with it by watering several times. If I superficial water one time, it's not going to penetrate way deep down in the soil. You see how dry it is, a foot down. I'm gonna have to water again and again and again to actually get this thing wet over the next 2 or 3 days. We're supposed to get rain 2 days from now as I'm filming this, like 1.5 inches of rain. That would be the perfect day of just gentle rain on it to resaturate this. When I water it also, I'm watering a much wider area than just the root ball of the plant. If I'd only water right there and there's dry soil right here, the dry soil is going to wick that water away. It's going to rebalance the watering. So water the bigger area. Down here in the real clay now. All right, let's see what that does for us. So this plant's going to become a focal point here in the garden, and we're going to have to turn it accordingly to make it really stand out. But you can see the contorted trunk on it. I did this over the course of several years of bending it back and forth. It didn't hurt it at all. Very, very happy tree. So we're going to... So tell me what you think, Steph. Is the other side probably?
The contortion is perfect.
Okay, that looks pretty good there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything it needs to go to my left a teeny bit, like that's too much. A little left. That's perfect.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just watered all that soil and it didn't penetrate that pile at all. Just got to firm it in a second here. Other thing about using this shovel is I can do this kind of stuff. Is that okay? Okay, all right. Normally you're dealing with a container plant that's going to have pretty straight walls on it, you know, the root ball is. And so it's easy to tamp straight down. When you dig something out of the ground like this, it's almost always going to come out in kind of a bowl shape. Has a center point that's touching the soil down there, and then it just kind of rolls around. That leaves pockets underneath it where you'll end up with air pockets if you don't go in and tamp down around it, and I'll do that in just a minute. Most important thing, the most important thing on your Japanese maple is knowing where the graft is. This one was grafted right here. You can see this Tamukeyama Japanese maple was grafted onto a different tree stock, a root stock. And right there is where it was originally grafted. That graft is up high and dry. It's healthy looking. And in order to keep it that way, I'm always going to make sure I'm never covering that. It'll never have pine straw or mulch or anything on it. Of course, this one's pretty high, so it wouldn't never be a problem, but sometimes your grafts will be right down at soil level, and it can be problematic if you're mounding stuff up on them. So make sure they're high and dry. Okay, so I'll take the back end of the shovel and just tamp a little bit right around the outside there, just to get any big air pockets filled in. Not trying to stamp all the air out of it. The soil needs to have air. It's just gently tamp. This is a very small root ball for a tree this big after 15 years or 12 years or whatever it's been. So lucky in that regard this morning. If this thing had actually been in the ground for 12 or 15 years, this would be a whole different struggle with a much wider root ball. All right, I think that's pretty much it. There's nothing covered that was covered before. So whether you're taking it out of a container, putting it in the ground, or moving it from one space in your landscape to another, anything that was above the ground, I can still see it. It's mounded just a hair up. We probably mound things up a hair higher here in my clay soil in Raleigh just to keep things a little bit high and dry, and we get plenty of rain here. Normally, not now, but normally. And so I leave things up just a bit. I also leave things up a bit because I anticipate that the loose soil that's underneath the plant where I just dug the hole is also going to recompact a bit. So if you plant a plant completely level with the ground, you'll notice over the next few months, it may like a vacuum sucking it back down into the ground, is because there's some loose soil under the bottom of it. So keep things up regardless. And if you're in clay soils, leave them up even a little bit more than that, so that even after they settle, they're still up above the grade a bit. This needs mulch. I've got several places out here in the garden. Anytime I'm flipping soil over like this, I want to come back and put a mulch cap on it. Regulates the water, will regulate the cold, the temperature during the winter time, and then prevent the million weed seeds that I just uncovered by digging that hole out here in the middle of the bed. If I didn't do anything with this, I didn't cover it up this winter, by spring this would just be completely and totally covered in weeds germinating, because that's what nature does. Nature covers the ground. So cover the ground for it, and then it doesn't have a reason, necessarily a need to, to cover itself. So let's get this thing watered in. I'm gonna water it several times. Just water it till the ground won't take any more water, and then I'm gonna come back and do it again. That will help get the rest of that soil settled in around it. You see me tamp that soil down a little bit with my foot and the end of the shovel. But again, I'm not trying to tamp it to the point where it's just so compact around it. I want the roots to go out into it. I want there to be air available. I just don't want giant air pockets where that soil will fall in on itself later. So gently tamped into the ground, water the whole surrounding area until the ground starts to refuse water, and then turn it off, come back again if the soil was dry. You can do this once if the soil was already a little bit moist, but based on the fact that this area is so dry, I'll water it 2 or 3 times to make sure that I actually saturate this entire area. Doing it this time of year, despite the fact that that was a small root ball, this plant's not gonna miss a beat. Our soil's warm enough here by February and March. Before it starts leafing out, it will have roots. It'll have new roots on it by the time it's leafing out. I need to do a little bit of pruning on it this winter to show off a little more of the trunk. And so if you're watching any of the pruning videos in February or March, that will definitely be included in it. We'll be pruning the Japanese maples. I think we have 2 more coming, and I think there's 3 or 4 out here in the landscape at this point, and they all need a little bit of attention. They're small, but they need some attention while they're small. It's certainly easier while the trees are small to be able to manipulate them like you want to manipulate them, even if that just means having a straight trunk. It's easy to do while they're small. So thank you guys for watching, following along with the channel, and finally moving this kind of art piece out here where it's a focal point in the garden. Thanks for watching.